Hi.
We are.
I love that you're high. So, what I think might be pertinent to the conversation is talking about daydreaming. I daydreamed this morning.
So just to sort of set a basis for this conversation, what we mean by a daydream is a state of consciousness where your mind is pleasantly wandering, where it doesn't feel to you like you are the director of it. Like in your dream state when you're night dreaming, it's like you're watching a movie. Well, you can do that in the daytime too, where you're not directing it, you're just observing it. Or a better way of saying that is you're receiving it. And because you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, you're receiving it from where? From your vortex, the ingredients in your vortex. Who's the director of it? Your inner being. And so that's what we mean by daydreaming.
Yes, I felt that early this morning. I was awakened by my alarm that I didn't set, with music that has been inspiring me recently. And I felt it was my inner being, collective consciousness, my mom who just recently passed, you guys saying, hey, pay attention, there's whales out there and you could see them. And I'm a huge fan.
Now, describe the daydream.
The daydream was imagining the humpback whales breaching and showing themselves to me, because that makes me super happy and joyful and makes me understand.
So you awakened.
I did.
And these thoughts are moving through your mind.
Not necessarily those specific ones. Well, yeah, I guess on some level. It was...
Well, what were you daydreaming?
I daydreamed the whales.
So those thoughts were moving through your mind?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those thoughts were moving through your mind, and it was a pleasant thing for you to think about. And then?
And then I saw a whale.
Then you got up.
Well, okay, so I'm up, I'm awake, and it's...
Where were you when this daydream was happening?
I was out on my veranda, outside.
So you saw them in your mind's eye before you saw them in the ocean?
Yes. So tell me about daydreaming more so I can do more of that.
The reason that we were a little deliberate in our questions with you here is because we don't want to give any of you the impression that you do your daydream to make things manifest.
Okay.
That's not what its purpose is. Its purpose is you daydream for the pleasure of connection. You daydream to become acquainted with what it feels like to be in your full power. You daydream so that you get better and better at recognizing when you are in superconsciousness mode. We said earlier that you will never really be in a place of non-resistance all the time, more of the time, but not all of the time. You will not be in that mode until you actually make your transition into non-physical. So these glimpses like this are the way that you taste the sweetness of it and recognize it when it's happening. And then if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would be asking for more of that, which means we would put ourselves in more situations where it would be possible to taste that. You said something along these lines when you just briefly described that your phone awakened you to music that you were really enjoying. Well, putting yourself in a position where you're listening to music that you really like is getting ready to be ready to be ready to be ready too. In other words, anything that you do with the intent of finding the deliciousness of pleasure within it, because that pleasure and satisfaction, that means alignment with source energy, because that's always where your inner being is. So it's like deliberately setting aside. We don't want to say words like you're training yourself to be in alignment, because that's too effort based and too almost sacrifice based too. We just want you to set yourself up for success. We want you to set yourself up for the opportunity to feel those glimpses and to recognize that you're having those glimpses and maintain them if you can for the pleasure of it, not for the productive value of it. But you're not daydreaming in order to make things happen. You're daydreaming because daydreaming is your representation of your alignment. And you see, there is so much pleasurable response to inspiration that you want along the way toward your manifestations. You think you do sometimes. You think that I just want to dream it into place, and then I want to go to the garage and the car's already there. Or I just want to dream it into place and I turn the corner and there's the person of my dreams standing there gazing into my eyes, and we both recognize each other. We know that you think you want those. But what you really want is to tune into that consciousness that leads you to this pleasurable moment, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. When you go to the orchestra, it doesn't play the crescendo immediately. It gets you ready for it. In other words, it takes you around a bit so that that moving crescendo is a crescendo. And so let's call the manifestation that you're talking about a crescendo that comes after lots of pleasure, sort of like orgasm. You see what we're getting at?
Yes. Yes, I do. I love it. I have been so, can we talk about being in that high flying place and feeling almost, I want to use a good word.
Use all the words you can find.
Okay, crazy, hyper, over exaggerated, goofy, so all feel tapped in, turned on, happy.
So all of those words that you used, you're using now because they're on your way to really letting go. It feels crazy because you're still aware of how you look to others. And it feels goofy because you're still aware of how you look to others. But all of that is your reaching for words that represent what our friend was talking about earlier, of that control and freedom, that being able to be how you want to be. And what you're really talking about is allowing the momentum to build to the place where you can't control it. It's like you're giving your control over. And that's some of the reasons you were using words like crazy and goofy. You're giving your control over to your higher power. You've given your control over to your higher power relative to your earth spinning in its orbit, and your blood pumping through your body, and your metabolism. There is so much about your world that you cannot begin to comprehend. Your scientists are trying to figure it out, but they're wrong about almost everything, because they're not approaching it from energy yet. They don't know about the vortex yet. They're not daydreaming. And so, more about daydreaming?
How about animals? Did we create animals to be on this earth with us, or did they create themselves? And the other question I have is...
Wait.
Oh.
So you're willing to step back into that broad perspective where you're the master of all of it? Is that what you're describing? Did we create the animals? Did we create the animals, or are you the creator of your own reality? Just playing with you a little bit. We want to stir this up a little bit.
When I've listened to you guys, a lot of times you'll say, well, the human experience, and that you were saying when you want to tap into us human people or experience emotions and that sort of thing, you tap into humans. And when you want to just be flying and free, you tap into the birds and the beasts and so forth. And I guess
that's not quite what we said, but we can get why you would think that that's what we said. And it's not so far off that we need to talk about why it's off. Well, we really should talk about why it's off a little bit. But here's what we want you to take away from all of that. First of all, you are creators, and you are adding to what's going on this planet because you are here now. And your attention here now is causing the evolution of what's going on the planet. And so your consciousness always has been part of the evolution of all things. And so we don't want to get into a strong and heavy discussion about who really is the creator, because the blending of the physical and the non-physical have been so intricately combined that we don't want to do more to cause a separation of your acceptance of this non-physical vantage point. And so your question really was a pretty good one. Did we create that? Because you stepped back into that non-physical ownership as you're talking about creation. That was a little convoluted. Only those of you who cared really followed that. The difference between the beasts and humans, the only one that is really a significant one, is that the animals really are more in step 3 more of the time. But humans, you've come to consciously address contrast for the purpose of launching rockets, for the purpose of then finding alignment. So the animals of your planet assist in the alignment part, while the humans are doing more about creating the vortex. And of course, that's really rather bold of us to say that, because animals are creating too. And animals are adding to the evolution of species too. In other words, everyone is creative in that way, because everyone, no matter what kind of consciousness you are talking about, is having an experience, and that experience is causing a launching, and that launching is being met by non-physical energy, and that meeting by non-physical energy of whatever it is that whoever it was that launched the rocket is adding to the whole of the evolution of all that is. Did you follow that? That was pretty good. This is a good time for a segment of refreshment. Are you feeling satisfied? Good time for a segment of refreshment.
Thank you so much.